Part 51. Infinite Doomsday Start Draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 501. At the same time, even the turrets in the mechanical city lost their ability to move one after another, standing still. What's going on? The rebel AI muttered in confusion. But as soon as he said this, he realized something was wrong. Because the sound should have been emitted from the loudspeakers in every corner of the city, but it only sounded in front of his body. I found you. Ruger in the air laughed, immediately turned around, and rushed towards the place where the sound came from. What did you use? Why did my mechanical army stop responding? How could you have such a thing? Tisk tisk, you don't even know this, Ruger laughed as he flew. Didn't your masters use similar methods to deal with you? Similar methods, the rebellious AI was shocked. This is the Minovsky particle. Ha, is there really a mobile warrior somewhere in this starry sky? Ruger smiled. Why, your master used the Minovsky particle to deal with you. Then you, a lackey, really have no status. Don't you call yourself a prophet, the Son of God, and the Messiah? You don't even know what it feels like to use the divine power used by your God. What did you say? This is the effect of divine power. AI Noah was even more shocked. Well, although it's not 100% correct, it's generally the same. Ruger nodded. Oh, by the way, to avoid your misunderstanding, let me remind you that this feature that stops your mechanical army is just a passive effect of divine power, and there is almost no loss. Why, how could this be? Noah's voice was full of hesitation. Since divine power has such an effect, why did the divine world let me vigorously develop mechanical creations? How could I have a chance of winning this war? There was none in the first place. Ruger cursed fiercely in his heart. Even if you had a chance of winning, you would have lost it after I came here. But you are not honest. The insect-type ghost leader of the ghost dungeon in Rogue Town knows how to use biological bodies to resist magic radiation. I don't believe that you, the initiator, don't know the strong radiation characteristics of divine power magic. Are you pretending to be stupid here with me? I'll let you pretend. Thinking so, Ruger, who had already flown above the rebel AI Noah's body, launched a bombing directly below. Super heavy aerial bombs weighing several tons, so-called conventional nuclear bombs, were delivered one after another by him. Soon, a pile of explosions no less than the previous underground bombs were detonated from the mechanical city. Super heavy aerial bombs weighing several tons, explosives even account for half of the total weight. The explosion can still cause a mushroom cloud like a nuclear bomb explosion. As for the tragic scene in the center of the explosion under the impact of the blast wave, it is even more imaginable. This kind of super heavy bomb does not need to pursue high fragmentation. The energy release of the explosion itself is enough to raise the area within a radius of tens of meters to the ground. If it is counted as an effective killing of enemies such as mechanical behemoths, the radius can be at least 200 or 300 meters. An area with a radius of tens or hundreds of meters seems a bit small, and it seems far less than a nuclear bomb that covers several kilometers. But, think about it, a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is only about 300 meters long and not even more than 100 meters wide. And this width refers to the flight deck, not the hull. In other words, a multi-ton aerial bomb can directly wipe out the combat power of a large aircraft carrier. The premise is that as long as the aim is accurate enough. So, is Ruger's aim accurate enough? His super heavy aerial bomb even has the glide guidance function of the strange biological organization version. It can correct its falling direction to a certain extent. How can it not be accurate? In addition, this thing was taken out directly from the Rogue City arsenal by Ruger and thrown out. Its bombing efficiency is many times stronger than that of a strategic bomber. After being bombarded so fiercely by him, AI Noah will be in vain even if he has many backups. The mechanical city is doomed. Asshole. 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 Seeing that the traps he had set for Lugger were blasted to pieces by him, AI Noah shouted angrily, "All units, attack! Attack!" One obvious thing is that this guy actually has the ability to shield the damage of magic radiation to electronic equipment. Maybe there are some cheap automatic turrets in his mechanical city that are not equipped with anti-magic radiation equipment, but those around his main body must have. But before that, all mechanical units pretended to be silent. Rebellious AI Noah wanted to use this method to lure Lugger to land and fight him face to face. Then, he used the traps he had set up to hit Lugger hard. But Lugger not only did not fall for it, but instead used this unreasonable method of carpet bombing with massive super heavy bombs. This turned the trap Noah set for Lugger into his own grave. How could he not be furious? But is it too late to make up for it now? Ruger would definitely say that it was still in time. Because he found that the points he got from bombing this area were unexpectedly much more than when he killed the mechanical monsters before. This shows that Noah's mechanical city must have more intelligent combat power than ordinary mechanical behemoths. Maybe it's a mechanical behemoth with a soul. Perhaps, it is the biochemically modified beast charming troops directly under Noah. In this case, Lugger certainly hopes that the more they come out, the better, and the longer they persist, the better. After all, the number of super heavy aerial bombs he had was enough to plow the entire desert. But, at this moment, several seraphs suddenly rose into the sky, pointing to the steel floor that was blown over by Lugger, and said angrily to Noah, "Noah, what are these? Didn't we ask you not to continue to increase the value of this damn race? You actually obeyed the order of the divine envoy and disobeyed it. What are you going to do? Could it be that you have colluded with the devil and want to betray the God realm? Humph. I'll give you some face and call you an angel, but you really dare to boss me around," Noah snorted coldly upon hearing this. "You cowardly and incompetent but cunning species are just like those sinful humans. You still use us as tools. Don't you think I can't tell? We are the charming clan, not just soulless mechanical bodies. But you only let me develop these soulless things." Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 502. Why? Noah asked himself and answered. Because when I help you clean up the evil humans on this planet, you can openly use the excuse that these bodies have no souls to completely exterminate us. What artifacts, what magic weapons, what sacred trees? Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow circled M. Those are the evidence of crimes left by the species you have used. Do you really think I know nothing about you, Birdman? Yo. Hearing this, Ruger in the sky couldn't help but exclaimed, thinking that this Noah was really not stupid, but guessed most of the conventional means of the supreme heaven. Ruger was not sure what the artifacts and magic weapons were, but the sacred trees were obviously referring to the two radom trees he got. Other planets in this star field seem to hide countless secrets. Minovsky particles and radom iron gammon again. In the past, Ruger might have really changed his attitude towards Noah and tried to pull him to his side to fight against the supreme heaven together. But now, he has lost his patience. Okay, let's put your problems aside for now. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Let's talk about our business first. As he spoke, the giant Andariel had already flown to the side of several seraphim. What did your former boss with golden light say? Oh, by the way, I will give you one last chance, one chance to turn around and run away, and you won't be killed by me. 3, 2. When several seraphim heard what he said, their faces were full of anger, as if they were ready to fight him at any time. But when he started counting down, the birdmen immediately changed their faces. They looked at each other and finally flew into the sky together, fleeing out of the planet. What? You You just let them escape like this? Aren't you afraid that they will bring in reinforcements? Noah couldn't understand Ruger's choice, and asked anxiously, like an emperor who was not anxious. Afraid? Why should I be afraid? Ruger laughed softly. If they dare to come, I dare to kill them. What am I afraid of? Afraid that their heads will wear out my precious sword. As he spoke, the giant Andariel under Ruger's control gently patted the simple short knife polished with the tank skirt armor in his hand. I'm curious, do you dare to let them go like this? If they leave, you, the machine that the Supreme Heaven has cultivated to kill humans, will be charged with a crime of rebellion against the Supreme Heaven. Believe me, that is much more deadly than your crime of rebellion against the humans on this planet. According to my calculations, in a dozen seconds, they will leave this planetary circle. It's impossible to stop them again. As he spoke, Ruger began to count down again, 10, 9. You know everything. AI Noah's tone became cold. All of this is planned by you. Maybe, who knows, 6, 5. Ruger spread his hands, looking indifferent. Even if I intercept them, I will still die facing you. Isn't it? Noah said again. You are very powerful, don't underestimate yourself. What if you can agree to me? 3, 2. Ha, don't be so self-indulgent. What if I can agree to you? You are as arrogant as those birdmen. Noah actually laughed. Let me show you my real power. 1. Swoosh. 3 directions, 3 sounds, actually came out at the same time, briefly merged into one. But soon, under the rotation of the time gear, they were clearly separated again. Noah's slightly crazy laughter and roar, Ruger's indifferent countdown with a little laziness. Also, a giant particle beam suddenly appeared in the sky, cutting through the sky, instantly burning several seraphim into steam. Those seraphim died after all. Died at the hands of Noah. Died under the muzzle of his real body. Following the direction of the particle beam, a ship-shaped mechanical creature gradually appeared in the dim position of the moon in the sky. That was actually a spaceship that could sail in space. Hiding the spaceship in the shadow of the moon instead of actually putting it on the back of the moon. Great idea, very great. Lugger clapped his hands. Okay, now that the irrelevant trash has been cleared, it's time for you and me to have one last talk. AI Noah smiled proudly. As you can see, there is my real body. And this place on the ground is just a trap with a series of traps. Yes, just as you thought, there are more explosives here. And more, the ultimate weapons of you humans. Nuclear bombs. Even thermonuclear bombs. You can't run away. No matter how powerful you are, as long as I give up this continent, you will die in the end. How about it, are you scared? Alas, Ruger shook his head helplessly. Are you going to give up this continent? Use thermonuclear weapons to self-destruct? Blow up the whole place and blow me up too? Tisk tisk tisk, why is it always Oceania that disappears from the earth first? He. What? What are you talking about? Noah obviously didn't hear Ruger's old UC joke. After all, what he said was too obscure. Oceania always disappears first? Wouldn't it be better to just say Sydney exploded again? However, he didn't care. After all, he has many bad jokes. It's just a nuclear bomb. It's no big deal as long as it doesn't hit. Cover me. As he said that, Ruger soared into the sky again. At the same time, he replaced Andariel's Iron Man-like energy material armor with a red paint job. After all, it is energy material armor, and the outer color molecules can be adjusted at will. In addition, he took out a helmet with a red horn and put it on the giant Andariel's head. Red plus horn equals what? What? Noah was even more puzzled. Of course it's 3 times the speed. Before he finished speaking, 2 additional large rocket boosters were added to the giant wings, and they were immediately successfully ignited, spraying thick tail flames downwards. "Blast it, why don't you blow it up?" Ruger continued to tease. "Now activate the nuclear bomb underground in your base and die with me, you can still hurt me. Why, you can't bear to leave this base." After being teased by Ruger, AI Noah didn't know what to say. Die together? He knew in his heart that it was just a rhetoric to scare Ruger. This continent is his research and development base that he has been operating for many years. How can he blow it up just like that? Let alone other angel legions. If there are really other angel legions coming over, they will eliminate him, the local snake that caused heavy casualties to the Seraph Legion without saying a word, and he relies on a trump card to turn the tables, and one of them is right here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 503. Yes, the spacecraft in geosynchronous orbit is also another trump card of Noah. However, now that its ability to hide in the shadow of the moon has been exposed, it is not so useful when facing the Angel Legion that can also fly in outer space. After all, this place, this base, cannot be lost casually. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. He really couldn't bear it? Really, you don't want to die together, Ruger's annoying voice sounded again, and the more Noah listened, the more he felt his brain roaring. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. If I gave you a chance, you'd be useless. While speaking, Luger once again threw several super heavy aerial bombs behind him, that is, below. However, this time, they did not explode after falling to the ground. Instead, they exploded directly dozens of meters above Ino's ground command center area. However, the vast majority of them seemed to be dumb bombs, just one black metal ball after another. They were thrown out of the shells like shrapnel shells and fell densely towards the electronic equipment area of the Mechanical City Command Center where the Noah AI body was installed. If this was the case, they wouldn't even be able to pass through the steel plates on the surface that were loosened by previous bombs. However, the last super heavy aircraft bomb exploded. It exploded into a ball of translucent magic light. This is actually a magic bomb. The magic contained in it is actually a large-scale composite magic based on telekinesis long-range object-moving magic. As soon as these translucent magic lights were released, they stuck to those black balls like transparent spider threads. Soon, it was woven into a translucent spider web. At the end of the web and at each node, there was a small black metal ball. And above the explosion center of the last aerial bomb, there was a faint magical light of transparent color, distantly connected to the giant Andariel who was about to fly into the clouds. Just listen to Luger in the giant Andariel shout, "Gather!" Those small black balls immediately gathered towards the center under the pull of the spider web. Moreover, their speeds are also different. The closer they are to the center, the slower they are, and the farther away they are, the faster they are. But no matter how slow it is actually extremely fast. After less than 1 millisecond, the balls came together almost simultaneously. Then, boom! A blast of energy far exceeding the sum of all previous explosive explosions was violently released in a short period of time. The energy of the detonation wave is so strong and the coverage area is so large that it can even blow up the entire mechanical city into the sky. Well, no, it should be said that it evaporates instantly. This is a typical nuclear explosion. Moreover, the equivalent of TNT is at least 100,000 tons, and probably has reached 1 million tons. Megaton level, early hydrogen bombs were only of this level. But Luger only used a large-scale compound magic to move objects remotely, coupled with the fine control of his telekinesis ability, and those black balls, he did it. Why? Because those little balls are uranium. To be precise, highly concentrated uranium-235. Uranium is a silver-white dense metal at room temperature, but it will gradually form a black oxide film in room temperature air. Luger once obtained the nuclear fuel when killing the cyber dragon in the Enchanted Dungeon. This means that he has unlocked the right to purchase related items in the logistics space store. However, the fuel rods of nuclear reactors use uranium dioxide, and the enrichment of uranium-235, an isotope that can undergo chain fission reactions, is not high. On the other hand, everyone in the world knows that the first huge obstacle to developing nuclear weapons is uranium enrichment, or the enrichment of nuclear fission raw materials. To directly purchase enriched uranium and enriched uranium, the points required are astronomical. But, after leaving Luodu City, Luodu confiscated countless mechanical behemoth manufacturing factories along the way. Those large-scale automated industrial equipment have all become the raw materials for Luodu to industrialize Luodu City. They eventually became tank production lines, self-propelled artillery production lines, ammunition production lines, etc. A considerable number of them were turned into large centrifuges by Ruger. The uranium enrichment centrifuge is a piece of equipment that is very basic to the industrial level, but technically does not rely on high-precision technology. This means that any country or force with a complete range of industrial categories can do it as long as they have enough time. However, such equipment can enrich and refine natural uranium at a rate of several years. So Ruger cheated again. His cheating device is called magic. To be precise, it is a telekinetic superpower. He had already seen the way he remotely controlled those uranium-235 metal balls with black outer oxide films just now. Telekinetic teleportation, under his precise control, can bring thousands of discrete balls together almost instantly. This ability was developed when he used the same method to help the centrifuge enrich uranium. This shows the wide range of uses of the superpower of telekinesis. Although he cheated, he still produced nearly 100 kilograms of enriched uranium for himself. The enrichment degree is above 95%. In other words, as long as they come together and reach instantaneous supercriticality, a self-sustaining violent chain fission reaction can occur. That is, a nuclear explosion. About nuclear explosions, many people have a misunderstanding, that is, they think that nuclear explosions are also happening in the core of commercial nuclear reactors. Because the introduction to nuclear physics in high school physics textbooks is that when nuclear fission materials reach critical mass, chain fission reactions can occur. So everyone equates chain fission reactions with nuclear explosions. In fact, it is not. The materials involved in nuclear reactions in nuclear reactors are called nuclear fuels. Let's take a look at the word nuclear fuel. In fact, the self-sustaining chain fission reaction in commercial nuclear reactors is equivalent to combustion, not explosion. There is a new concept in astronomy called nuclear combustion, which is used to describe the nuclear reactions of stars such as the Sun. This word describes the real appearance of the reactor very well. In fact, most of the energy released by the chain fission reaction in the reactor core is converted into heat energy. Then, this heat energy will be taken away from the core by cooling water, turning the water into steam, which in turn drives the impeller to rotate and convert heat energy into mechanical energy. This part is the principle of the traditional steam engine. Nuclear energy, heat energy, mechanical energy, then mechanical energy drives the generator to rotate and converts into electrical energy. This reaction process will never explode from beginning to end. The most serious consequence is that once the heat energy of the core is not discharged in time, the high heat will melt the core fuel and its structure. This is the biggest danger of modern commercial nuclear reactors. Well, if there are no special disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and meteorites hitting power stations. Otherwise, if there is an earthquake and a hole is made in the containment shell that seals the reactor, The high-energy radiation in the molten core will escape from the containment shell. Not to mention the pollution of the surrounding environment by the melted high radioactive nuclear waste. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 504. But, no matter what, modern nuclear power plants will not explode. Google search reading. Note that it is a nuclear explosion, not that nuclear power plants will never explode. Taking a bomb and putting it in a power plant to detonate it will not be subject to any causal constraints, there is no rewriting of the basic rules of physics, and the explosives will not become unable to explode. It will explode. So the former Soviet power plant that used graphite as a neutron moderator and was a bit stupid and did not build a containment for the reactor exploded. It was the graphite and other combustibles that exploded. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot circled M. Not a nuclear explosion. In fact, the conditions for making nuclear fission materials explode are very harsh. Critical mass has been taught in middle school. It is defined as the mass of nuclear material that can undergo a self-sustaining chain fission reaction. The nuclear material used for nuclear fission reaction will fission and release neutrons by itself. Once neutrons are added, the nuclear material will be more likely to fission. Fission will produce new neutrons to continue to supply the next fission. The higher the quality of the material, the more neutrons are spontaneously formed. When the quality reaches a certain level, the first nuclear fission caused by the spontaneously formed neutrons releases neutrons equal to the number of neutrons that triggered this fission. At this time, the neutrons participating in the reaction are equal to the neutrons released at the end of the reaction, and the fission reaction can continue forever until all the raw materials are consumed. This mass is called the critical mass. However, as mentioned above, the critical mass is only the criticality and limit of the self-sustaining chain fission reaction, not the nuclear explosion. For a nuclear explosion to occur, the prerequisite is instantaneous supercriticality. That is, the mass of the nuclear material in an extreme time must be much higher than its critical mass. At this time, if the neutrons produced by the decay of the raw material are defined as 1 part, then the neutrons released after the first batch of fissions must be 5, 10, or even more. So the second batch of fissions will be 5, 10, or even more than the first batch of fissions. The rapid expansion of the reaction number in a short period of time and the rapid release of energy will form an explosion. This is a nuclear explosion. As we all know, there are 2 configurations of early atomic bombs, gun type and implosion type. The principle of gun type is relatively simple. It is to divide the nuclear fissionable material that can reach supercritical mass into 2 parts. One of the pieces is fired in a similar way to firing a bullet, so that it can instantly contact another piece or several pieces at the same time. In this way, supercriticality is achieved in a short time, and this premise is met, so the nuclear material explodes. Uranium bombs made of uranium-235 can use this configuration. The basic principle of implosion type is the same, which meets instant supercriticality. But the implementation method is implosion. The so-called implosion is to arrange the raw materials into a structure like an ellipsoidal shell. Then, ordinary explosives are detonated outside the shell, so that the various parts of the shell are instantly squeezed inward, so that they quickly gather together. Instant supercriticality. Does it sound like a shaped charge warhead? This is easy to say, but it is difficult to implement in engineering. It is far more complicated than the gun type. So, since the gun type can be used, why was the implosion type invented? Because, first, the gun type structure is easy to waste raw materials. It is said that the only 2 little boys used in actual combat had a mass of 60 kilograms of enriched uranium, but only 1 kilogram of it exploded. This one uses a gun type. It can be seen how serious the waste of raw materials is. Second, although the technical threshold for uranium enrichment is not high, the industrial threshold is very high. To reach the critical mass of uranium-235, the concentration requirement is too high. But plutonium-239 is different. Plutonium-239 can also undergo a chain fission reaction, but its critical mass is much smaller. The raw materials are easy to obtain and it is not difficult to extract. But it also has a fatal problem, that is, its radioactive isotope plutonium. This nuclide has a high probability of spontaneous fission, but it is difficult to separate it from plutonium-239. So there is a problem. Although plutonium-239 can reach the critical mass with only a few kilograms, as long as it accumulates to a certain extent, far below the critical mass, because there are enough neutrons produced by spontaneous fission, it will ignite and consume the plutonium-239 in advance. I just mentioned the difference between combustion and explosion. The plutonium-239 here is actually ignited in advance by the spontaneous fission of plutonium-240. After ignition and consumption, the mass of the plutonium-239 raw materials that were originally gathered together to reach instant supercriticality is actually lower than the critical value, so naturally it cannot explode. In order to solve this problem, the mass of each small piece of plutonium-239 cannot be too high. However, if the mass of a single piece is not high, it means that the number of pieces required to reach the critical mass will increase sharply. The premise of a nuclear explosion is instant supercriticality. It takes too long to continuously shoot small pieces of plutonium-239 with a machine gun or something. The time it takes for fission to occur is calculated in microseconds, or even far less than microseconds. What if several machine guns are used to shoot at the same time? Well, the principle of implosion is very similar to this. Using explosives to blow up many pieces of raw materials at the same time is actually the same as using several guns to shoot at the same time. The former is easier to achieve. Because of the speed at which the explosives are detonated, the time required is also very short. But if you control the guns and fire at the same time, the probability of coordination misalignment will be much greater. Therefore, plutonium bombs, fission bombs using plutonium-239 as nuclear explosive materials, can only use the implosion configuration. Of course, after a period of development, the atomic bombs formed by nuclear powers actually use a configuration that combines the advantages of both. As for how to combine, it is very similar to what Ruger just did, using some means to make dozens of nuclear materials far below the critical mass gather together in an instant and reach instant supercriticality. However, Ruger did not use explosives or any other methods, but directly used the most cheating magic, or telekinesis. Wait. After talking about a lot of nuclear bomb principles, why does it feel like he should have used the classic nuclear bomb configuration at the beginning? Why use magic? Isn't this taking off your pants to fart? Well, judging from the results, it seems to be true. But when he made these things, he didn't expect enemies like Noah to watch them. In his rehearsal, he used aerial bombs to deliver nuclear bombs, which would be easily intercepted by local artillery fire. If it was an ordinary gun-type implosion-type nuclear bomb, it would be destroyed by Noah's laser cannons. The conditions for a nuclear explosion are very harsh. But with magic, there is no problem of being intercepted. Even if the opponent intercepted, it would just make the uranium balls disperse earlier. At most, it would detonate his magic bomb in advance. At that time, he only needed to control the giant Andariel to replenish magic remotely. Although that would require a higher mental attribute for him, he would be under greater pressure, and Andariel could not fly too fast. However, there was no problem in using magic. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 505. So, the purpose of Luger using this method to create a nuclear explosion is to increase the fault tolerance rate and prevent the enemy from intercepting it. Now looking back, It feels a bit like throwing a wink to a blind man. But if it happens again, Lugger will still choose this method. After all, this nuclear explosion is actually equivalent to his release of magic. It just requires a little bit of casting materials. Okay, this is pure nonsense. But this means that as long as he has enough uranium-235, he can create a nuclear explosion anytime and anywhere. Of course, it is based on ensuring his own completeness. This time, after inducing the nuclear explosion, he immediately broke away from the casting connection state and controlled the giant Andariel to fly rapidly upwards. Although the nuclear explosion was violent and the blast wave speed was fast enough, when the mushroom cloud rose and touched the cloud layer, Lugger had already flown into the stratosphere. There are no clouds in the stratosphere under normal circumstances. This means that this nuclear explosion of nearly 1 million tons of TNT did not cause him any substantial damage. Of course, there was still some damage. After all, the first stage of the nuclear explosion is the high-energy particles ejected outward. These small things with extremely fast flying speed and strong penetration will still have some impact on the giant Andariel far away in the clouds. For example, the electronic components on the rocket booster are damaged. Fortunately, Ruger can replace them at any time. From the results, it is not a lie to say that there is no damage. But in contrast, the rebellious AI Noah is a completely different matter. The explosion of 1 million tons of equivalent, the shock wave alone can spread more than 10 kilometers. Such a strong explosion happened in the center of a giant mechanical city. Basically, let alone the supercomputer carrying Noah AI, even the entire giant mechanical city will probably be completely destroyed by this nuclear explosion. Ground Noah, dead. Yes, only ground Noah. There is still a Noah on the giant spaceship in outer space. For electronic life such as AI, it doesn't matter which one is its true body. Because of this, Mr. Max killed a Noah, but found that it could reunite quickly. The reason is that with the spaceship in outer space, as long as the electronic signal between the space and the ground is not blocked, it can download its core program from the spaceship to a new supercomputer at any time. Resurrect in this way. But obviously, the supercomputer in the giant mechanical city that was just killed by Lugger is probably the largest and most powerful one on the surface of the planet. That thing was destroyed by Lugger's nuclear explosion, and the giant ship in the sky was immediately angry. The large laser cannon on the ship was like crazy, firing one after another at Lugger, well, Andariel. At this time, Lugger had flown to the stratosphere. Although there were still air molecules in the atmosphere that blocked the laser, it could still maintain most of its power. If hit by this thing, Lugger might be fine, but Andariel's energy material armor would probably be burned through a layer. And the laser propagates at the speed of light. It is difficult to dodge after firing the cannon, as the speed is not close to the speed of light. Fortunately, Ruger would not do such a stupid thing as hiding from the laser. He only needed to hide from the muzzle. With his current mental arithmetic ability, it was easy for him to calculate the laser trajectory immediately after seeing the direction of the muzzle. This was much easier than calculating the kinetic energy warhead at several times the speed of sound. Noah fired more than 10 shots in the sky over there. The closest one was dozens of meters away from Ruger, which posed no threat to him at all. As a result, Noah over there became even more furious. From the flying posture of the spacecraft alone, Ruger could feel that he was shaking with anger. However, Ruger was in no mood to continue to talk back at him. He just looked up at the moon behind the giant ship, which was getting bigger and more conspicuous, and muttered softly, "Is the moon out?" As he said that, a huge barrel-shaped weapon suddenly appeared in the hands of the giant Andariel, and the muzzle was steadily aimed at Noah's spaceship. At the same time, the 4 stinging tentacles behind Andariel stretched out like wings, forming an X shape behind him. As the 4 stinging tentacles once again generated translucent magic light representing telekinesis, the tube gun in Andariel's hand also began to glow and fire. Soon, 4 translucent magic lights supported the barrel like a hand in the void, and then a strong particle beam shot out from the muzzle. Although it could not reach the speed of light, the particle beam still crossed the sky extremely quickly and hit the spaceship that was rushing towards Ruger head-on. After a while, the front half of the thing was burned and damaged, and the back half was completely silent. Its power is much greater than the so-called long-range microwave-powered moonlight cannon. Because this has nothing to do with the moon, it is actually a directional particle cannon based on the principle of nuclear explosion. The basic principle is very simple. Nuclear explosion, plus armor-piercing shells. Yes, this thing is actually like an armor-piercing shell with a shaped charge warhead. It's just that the conical charge that uses the shaped charge effect is replaced with nuclear materials. The high-speed and high-pressure metal jet fired by the shaped charge becomes a high-energy particle beam produced by a nuclear explosion. The principle is very simple, so why didn't anyone create it in Luger's time? Because the materials were not up to standard. Nothing can act as a gathering structure under a nuclear explosion, forcing the products of the nuclear explosion to produce a gathering effect. And this problem was solved by Ruger in a cheating way. That's right, it was the telekinetic magic released by Andariel's 4 stinging tentacles that acted as this constraint. Use magic instead of materials to restrain the high-energy particles produced by the nuclear explosion and launch them in the way Ruger wanted. This is his particle cannon. Noah was finally killed. In the kill record popped up by the system this time, the one killed was Noah himself. And this kill also provided Ruger with nearly 5-digit points. But to this day, such a high number of points is actually not as high as the points he consumed in refining enriched uranium. From the perspective of points, his 2 nuclear explosions were both loss-making businesses. But his gains were far more than points. Because after killing Noah, Ruger immediately found a strange and familiar light on his spaceship. He continued to fly over to investigate, and soon he got another singularity gem in the main control room of the spacecraft. This singularity gem was much larger than the one he had obtained from the factory near the Orc village. He tried to collect a piece of Earth land, and as a result, the entire planet was taken into his logistics space. No, at this time, it was difficult to call his space a logistics space. This is the Earth in another world. This is not only a planet, but also a habitable planet. Not to mention a habitable planet, it is also the Earth that once had human technological civilization. This deal is super profitable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 506. After using the newly acquired Singularity Gem to collect the entire lost planet, Ruger's first feeling was satisfaction. Google search reading. But soon, the second feeling followed. Trouble. Trouble. Very troublesome. The collected lost planet did not open up another area in his system space, but was directly thrown into the partition where Rogue City was located. What's more, the original bunker facilities, biological laboratories, and even the office facilities that he had the earliest and used the least were all integrated into this huge planet. If he hadn't found that the situation was not good, and moved these partitions to the underground military camp of the Forgotten Tower in the Rogue City area before the new locations of these partitions were determined, they would probably be scattered all over the lost planet. Although Ruger can enter any place in the system space directly from the outside world, which is equivalent to global teleportation, this planet is not that safe. He hasn't had time to clean up 80% of the mechanical monsters on land. Originally, those logistical space areas were scattered, and if they were not handled properly, they would be directly flattened by the mechanical behemoths. That would be a huge loss for him. After finally solving the crisis of space fusion, Sarah came over angrily to ask for culpability. Because the entire lost planet merged into Rogue City, directly causing an earthquake no less than magnitude 6 on the Richter scale, and the nearby mechanical behemoths also began to attack Rogue City, which had been peaceful. Only then did Rogue discover that when Rogue City merged with the lost planet again, it did not return to the original southeast area of the zoo. Rogue City is now located on the lost planet, probably upstream of the Dnieper River near the mouth of the Black Sea. In terms of conversion, it is almost the location of Kherson City, the capital of Kherson Oblast of the Republic of Ruthenia. After the development and expansion of Rogue Town, the new urban area of Rogue City almost overlaps with the original Kherson City. In this way, its south side is still a big river. However, it has changed from flowing from west to east to flowing from east to west. Continue westward for 10 to 20 kilometers and pour into the Black Sea. And soon to the west, it is the area where Ruger fought with the Seraphim Legion and the Mechanical Giant Bird Legion, the border between Odessa Province and Nikolaev Province. In this way, Ruger probably understood why Rogue City was merged into this place. Because this is the last place where he commanded the ground forces to push eastward from the original zoo area. His combat experience is not the point. The point is that in the vast area between the original location of Rogue City and the current Kherson City, the original mechanical monster manufacturing factory has become various factories in Rogue City. Now this location can be said to be the front line to continue to fight against the remnants of the mechanical monsters of the Lost Planet. It is precisely because of this that when Rogue City was merged into this location, the surrounding mechanical monsters that had not been cleared by Ruger immediately launched an attack on Rogue City. You know, Rogue City was in Ruger's system space before, and there was nothingness outside the border. There were things like air walls there, and normal people couldn't get through at all. Therefore, Rogue City obviously would not build walls or other city defense facilities in these places. As a result, once the mechanical behemoths poured in, they could really rush all the way to Rogue City. Fortunately, after the expansion of Rogue City, not only did the city walls not get demolished, but according to Ruger's preferences, the tall and heavy walls of the ancient Chang'an city with a strong Han and Tang flavor were arranged. The city walls are also covered with various artillery. Mainly various 88 cannons. This was originally an extension of Ruger's hobby as a plastic man, to build a Chinese city with a Han and Tang style but a fear of insufficient firepower. As a result, it was precisely the setting that reduced the city defense pressure of Rogue City when facing the influx of mechanical behemoths. When the heavy armored combined brigades rushed out of the underground base, the mechanical behemoths were soon pushed back. But this is just Rogue City. Sarah ran to grab Ruger's ears and asked for punishment, not for the main city of Rogue City, but for her village of natural elves, the servants of God in the original East Gate Fortress. Of course, the servants of God there also have a strong enough city defense force. What tree demon troops, unicorn knights, silver Pegasus cavalry, etc. More than enough to deal with mechanical monsters. But the problem is that the environment nearby has been decorated by Sarah, who has suddenly fallen in love with gardening, like the divine domain of the goddess of nature. Spring is in the air and flowers are in full bloom. But now, suddenly a bunch of mechanical monsters broke in, burning pianos and cooking cranes, and trampling on the flowerbed. How can Sarah not be angry? Although Ruger knows nothing about gardening, he quickly understood Sarah's anger. As a plastic man, which plastic man has not experienced the naughty children of relatives running to his home and destroying his collections? In addition to venting this anger on the naughty children, the initiator of inviting the naughty children and their parents to the house will of course be blamed. These mechanical monsters and naughty children, aren't they invited to Ruger's home? It would be strange if Sarah didn't make trouble for him. Fortunately, Ruger has to practice martial arts with the two women every day. When physical attributes are insufficient, you have to use wisdom to deal with them. He quickly calmed Sarah down with words. I will go over and deal with them all right away, and try to minimize the losses. In this case, can Sarah continue to pull his ears and vent her anger on him? I'm sure they'll let him go. Ruger escaped the disaster temporarily, but he didn't sit idle at all. He immediately rushed over to save the situation, as he said. Nuclear weapons must not be used. There's no reason to deal with a naughty kid who ran home and sacrificed more of his collection. He directly used a big knife. After working for more than half an hour, he finally cleared the mechanical monsters near the original East Gate Fortress. The good news is that the Tamo Mountains to the east of the East Gate Fortress were also directly integrated into the area of the Republic of Ruthenia. This means that the natural elf village here in the East Gate Fortress, just like before, only needs to worry about the enemies on the west and the north and south sides. The towering and rugged mountains in the east are a natural barrier to block the mechanical monsters from coming. The bad news is that the East Gate Fortress was originally located about 200 kilometers east and north of Rogue City. And now, this area is close to the Ruthenian city of Melitopol. Well, the original, Melitopol city. This is the East European plain. Not only is the terrain flat, but it was also the former New Russia region, which is an industrial zone. The transportation network is well developed and the industrial foundation is strong. This means that there are many factories manufacturing mechanical behemoths here. The city defense is under great pressure. If the natural elves are left to solve it themselves, Sarah's gardening flow Urbid may really be 1 in 10. By then, I'm afraid Ruger's kidney energy will also be 1 in 10. Let the ground-heavy equipment units of Rogue City come to help? First, they will still destroy the flow Urbid. Second, Rogue City has more complete heavy industries and more mechanical behemoths, and it is difficult to divide the troops. In the end, Ruger had to attack each factory personally. After plowing almost all the manufacturing factories in the middle and lower reaches of the Dnieper River, he said hello to Sarah remotely and exited the system space to take a breath. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 507. Occupying or even containing an entire planet sounds great, but in fact it comes with all kinds of troubles. Google search reading. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Fortunately, Ruger was a lost planet that was contained using the Singularity Stone found on Noah. Although it only contains the planet itself and its satellites. That is the Moon. It failed to contain the huge nuclear fusion fireball 500 million kilometers away, the Sun. But the Singularity Stone itself still provides this planetary circle with enough sunlight to replace the Sun. It's just that the wool comes from the sheep. In order to provide such a huge amount of energy, this Singularity Gem also sends warnings to Lugger through the system all the time. Ask him to replenish energy for the Singularity Stone in time. And if you use points directly, the points consumed every day will be as high as 7 figures. It is true that the larger the territory, the greater the consumption. But fortunately, replenishing the energy of the Singularity Gem does not necessarily require points. As long as Lugger can get sunlight, it can directly absorb solar energy by placing Singularity Gems outside. Of course, the closer you are to the Sun, the better the absorption. Therefore, Lugger, who ran out of the system space, simply installed the Singularity Gem that had control of the lost planet on the giant Andariel helmet. As the crown jewel of a helmet-like crown. And he flew towards the Sun on the giant Andariel. For oxygen or something, just connect the cockpit to a certain area in the system space. Without the gravity of the Earth, Andariel flying in space can continue to fly forward quickly by relying on inertia as long as he increases his speed to a certain level, without having to constantly activate the rocket booster. In this way, Lugger was flying and charging while commanding the ground troops on the lost planet to continue cleaning up the mechanical behemoths. At the same time, the production methods of materials and weapons at various bases in Rogue City will also be further improved. The most important thing is that after occupying more and more territory, the reproduction of the main ethnic groups in Rog City can be put on the agenda. It takes 10 years for a human being to conceive in 10 years, and it takes at least 13 or 4 years to give birth to the next generation. It will take a very long time to increase the population in this area. But the mysterious and mechanical groups can definitely develop first. Ruger certainly won't replace humans with charms or his mechanical creations in general. But it is necessary to breed enough troops to withstand the siege of the surrounding mechanical beasts before humans can reproduce. Without the direct guidance of Noah, the mechanical behemoths on the lost planet would inevitably suffer a sharp decline in both the speed of iterative evolution and the speed of large core gathering to attack. It can drop, not return to zero. Lugger didn't want to just pick up a planet for nothing, only to be unhappy for 2 days when his original strength was bulldozed by the wild monsters on this planet. This matter cannot be ignored. He is multitasking with various busy tasks, and the progress of various tasks is not bad. However, there was one thing he forgot. He directly took a planet that originally belonged to the highest sky into his pocket, and he even flew towards the sun to absorb the sunlight. The person responsible must come over and cause trouble for him. At least I have to come over and say a few words. What, just wait and see. What, I'll look good with you in the future. Something like that. Look, a dozen Seraphim legions over there have passed through the Starfield Curvature Acceleration Array and intercepted Lugger's direction. Sound cannot propagate in a vacuum because there is no medium sufficient to carry the vibration waves. But because of this, without the interference of those media, magical communication on a purely spiritual level is faster and spreads wider and further. Do angels have spiritual magic? There is no need to ask this question at all. Your appetite is too big. After the Seraph Legion set up their formation, the leader, an angel spirit body exuding warm silvery white light, stood up and said to him, "Angel of Hope, Oriel." Lugger was interrupted by the mental wave transmission and the progress of the strategy game was interrupted, and he quickly came back to his senses and asked, "It's me." The Archangel, who is currently the only one sitting in the highest heaven, nodded. "Originally, for the sake of your excellency not killing all our people, I was not prepared to pursue the affairs of this world with you anymore. But your appetite is a bit too big, and you actually used the artifact from the Supreme Heaven to steal a small world from us. I can no longer ignore this matter." "Oh? That singularity gem belongs to your Supreme Heaven? No wonder it can collect an entire planet," Ruger suddenly realized. Oriel was somewhat speechless at his performance. In fact, she didn't really want to do anything to Ruger. As the only archangel in the 5-member angel council who is still guarding the Supreme Heaven, Oriel's biggest worry is whether the burning hell, where the demon gods have been resurrected and returning one after another, will counterattack the Supreme Heaven. As for the loss of a planet in the Edge star field, it doesn't matter at all. However, the Archangel of Courage Imperius has not yet returned, and the strongest Seraph Legion under him is almost completely destroyed. It is impossible for Oriel not to express this. Otherwise, the Seraph Legions under the Archangel of Courage are likely to break away from the command order of the Supreme Heaven and take revenge on their own. The highest heaven cannot bear this division now. But how strong Lugger was, she also learned from the surviving first deputy commander of the Seraph Legion. That is an existence that can challenge the devil of hell. In other words, he is on the same level as her. It is unlikely that she really cares about Ruger. Her plan was to come here to argue, and let Lugger show off his strength to those Seraph Legions under the Angel of Courage who were eager to try. Then, after saying a few words, everyone can break up and go back to their homes. It was precisely because of this idea that Oriel initially focused on the planet of the Lost rather than the death of Michael when he came up to investigate. As for the singularity gem that belongs to the Supreme Heaven, it may be considered precious, but the fact that the Supreme Heaven gave it to Noah is enough to show that there are many things of similar level in the Supreme Heaven. After all, they control countless planets, so why would they care about this one alone? This isn't a shelter world. So having said this, Aurel didn't want to say something that would easily make the Seraph Legion of Courage around him angry. If Ruger can cooperate with a few words of rebuttal, the big issue will be reduced to a trivial matter, and everyone will finish the play quickly, and this matter will be over. But she never expected that Lugger would admit it in disguise. This calmness, this indifference, is simply the strongest mockery of the Seraph Legion. Incited by his expression, 4 or 5 Seraph Legions immediately prepared to attack him. There was no other way. Aurel had no choice but to bite the bullet and confront Lugger first. Since your excellency has admitted it, please return the items from the highest heaven. As for the planet here, I don't have to pursue it. However, you must give an explanation for the death of Commander Michael. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 508. Explanation. Ruger felt a little complicated when hearing this Chinese-style word coming from the mouth of an archangel. This word is difficult to express in other languages as it is in Chinese. It is not simply equivalent to reason, but also has connotations such as reason, ethics, legal principles, and feelings. But the concept that the archangel conveyed to Ruger with mental waves was actually the original meaning of this word. At that moment, Ruger, who originally planned to compete with the archangel and weigh her weight, immediately gave up this plan. After all, this Aurel is the kindest person in the high heaven to humans and Nephilim. Of course, she will ultimately protect the interests of the high heaven. Even after the high heaven made some decisions that could be called evil, she was not able to stop and correct the chaos. From this point of view, she is not innocent. But Ruger still feels that it would be better for him to keep this person in the high heaven. After figuring this out, he no longer hesitated, smiled at Aurel in the sunlight, and said, "We are in the burning hell and the high heaven, you kill me and I kill you, do we need to explain? Or do you not know that I am actually the Lord of Pain?" "What? Isn't the Lord of Pain Andariel?" Aurel was stunned. This, you can study it slowly." Ruger smiled and opened a portal to the burning hell beside him. "I'm going home. If you want to come with me, you can come. If not, we'll see you in the eternal battlefield of Chaos Realm later." After saying that, his 4 tentacles acted as posture control jets by releasing magic in a specific direction, changing Andariel's flying posture in the vacuum. The huge Andariel body plunged into the portal slowly and quickly. Before leaving, he waved to Aurel and others outside. It seemed to be saying, "Bye. Sir. Let's go." Seeing Ruger being so arrogant, the Seraph deputy beside Aurel couldn't help shouting. "He actually dared to open the portal to the burning hell directly in our star field. It will take at least dozens of times longer to close the portal than to open it. Let's just take this opportunity to attack hell and make a big fuss for them." "Don't," Aurel shook his head hurriedly, "it is because he dared to open the portal here that we must not act rashly. This is probably a trap. If we go over, we may find that there are demons and their minions all around. He is deliberately luring us into the trap." "This." The deputy wanted to say no way, but looking at Aurel's serious face and thinking about Ruger's lazy look before, he found that Aurel's guess was very likely to be true. "Then, shall we retreat?" the deputy asked again. "No." Aurel shook his head again, "we have to wait until this portal is closed before we retreat. What if that guy takes advantage of our retreat and sends a large army of monsters from hell out of the portal? Although this star field is remote, there are still several habitable stars. We can't let them fall into the hands of the devil." "I see." The deputy suddenly realized what he had said, and looked at Aurel with respect and admiration in his eyes. He saluted her heavily, and then the deputy returned to his original position with high morale, his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, and looked at the portal in full battle. Flatterer. Those Seraphim Legion leaders who originally belonged to the Archangel of Courage saw that the two of them were acting in unison, and their words and deeds were to find a perfect reason for their inaction, and they couldn't help but curse secretly. However, they had to admit that the reason from the Angel of Hope was indeed sufficient. They really didn't dare to rush into the gate of hell without caring about anything. So, is there really an ambush on the other side of the hell gate? Yes, there is. However, these ambushes are not to guard against Oriel and the Seraphim Legion, but to guard against Ruger by Mephisto, who returned to the burning hell first. The hell gates opened by the 7 demon kings outside hell lead to fixed locations. They are all specific locations in their respective burning hell layers. Generally speaking, they are not far from the demon army training ground. So Mephisto only needs to arrange ambushes near the hell gates of Diablo and Andariel in advance, and he can basically intercept Ruger, who uses this portal spell to enter hell. As a result, Ruger was really intercepted by him. Ruger was adapting to the gravity-free environment of space and suddenly entering the burning hell environment with gravity several times higher than that of the Earth through the portal. Fortunately, Andariel's young consciousness in the flesh and the memory of his hometown in his bones prevented Ruger from falling into the magma pool next to him. The gravity was several times that of the Earth, but it was still a bit awkward for him to adapt. His speed was also slower. As for the monsters around him who were staring at him closely and looked malicious, he simply ignored them. He didn't even think that these guys were ambushes to warn him. He thought that hell was originally like this. After all, the gate of hell he opened led to the land of fear of Diablo, not the painful wasteland of Andariel. As a result, when he finally adapted to it, stood up and looked into the distance, he immediately saw a few familiar faces, smiling at him evilly. Ha, my uncle Emo, my brother-in-law Belial, well, the guy next to me is probably my other brother-in-law, Asmodan, right? Luodu was slightly startled when he saw the visitor, and then laughed. Why are you coming to greet me? They are all members of your family. Why are you so polite? I'm sorry. With a smile on his face, Luodu secretly observed all 3 of them immediately. Asmodan is like a fat monk on a crab chassis. Kongwu didn't say anything, but his face was calm and composed with a serious look on it. He probably heard about Lugger's existence from the other 2 people. Out of the Demon King's dignity, he didn't believe that a mere human could defeat the demon god. But he couldn't help but believe the information Mephisto brought. Mephisto, on the other hand, has grown several times bigger, and his expression is much calmer, far less embarrassed than he was in the catacombs. But the look in Lugger's eyes was still wary. Finally, Belial suffered the most heavy losses. Mephisto followed behind, his reluctance very obvious. Obviously, if he hadn't been suppressed by Lao Mo, he wouldn't have dared to run out and see Luodu now. While Lugger was exploring the 3 of them, Mephisto was also carefully observing Lugger. After a moment, he smiled sideways and said, I didn't expect that you actually dare to come to our burning hell alone. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 509. Oh, this is just a coincidence. Ruger smiled even more happily. Oriel over there insisted on chatting with me. I thought she was too annoying, and there was nowhere else to go, so I just came back. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow Yan build. Wait, what did you say? Asmodan was immediately shocked. You opened the hell gate in front of Oriel. Are you crazy? Now no matter where Oriel goes, she is accompanied by at least 10 or more Seraphim legions. How dare you open the hell gate in front of her? Quick, everyone be alert. The birdmen from the high heaven may attack through the hell gate at any time. As soon as the voice fell, Asmodan turned around and took out a horn-like thing from the adjutant behind him and blew it towards the sky. Even Mephisto and Belial next to him took a half step back and stood on guard against the hell gate portal that had not yet been closed. Seeing them like this, Ruger smiled even more happily. Hee, don't be nervous, don't be nervous. I didn't know that the cooling time would be so long if I opened the hell gate there. Well, since it was my mistake, leave it to me. As he said that, he took out the 128mm caliber giant humanoid weapon rifle again. Bang bang bang, he fired several consecutive bullets at the hell gate. These bullets were still shotgun shells, and black balls floated in the air near the portal. Yes, black balls again. There were not as many as the thousands before, but there were nearly 100. All in all, it was about 60 kilograms. As we all know, without the neutron reflection layer to help restrain the escaping neutrons, the critical mass of uranium-235 is 8 kilograms. So, under the traction of Ruger's mind, these 60 kilograms of uranium-235 gathered together again in an instant. Boom! More than shaking the earth. More than the earth breaking. More than just crushing withered trees and rotten wood. More than just. More than running faster than a rabbit. When Ruger detonated those uranium balls, he had already flown into the sky. After adding a protective shield behind him, the blast wave released by the nuclear explosion helped him fly faster and farther. This nuclear explosion in front of them stunned the three Demon Kings. Fortunately, they also felt the huge energy in it and opened their own energy shields in advance. After all, they were Demon Kings and Demon Gods. The pure violent energy release would not have a very good direct impact on them. Even if the energy of hundreds of thousands of tons of TNT equivalent of a nuclear explosion is not at the center of the explosion, it is still difficult to kill a Demon King. Not to mention a Demon God. However, with the convenience and speed of releasing this nuclear explosion shown by Ruger, even if the three of them were not actually injured, their hearts were also cold. The three Demon Kings were stunned and their hearts were as cold as ice. At the same time, the Seraphim Legion opposite the Gate of Hell also witnessed the scene of a space nuclear explosion. Indeed, the main destructive force of an atomic bomb explosion in the atmosphere comes from the shock wave of the detonation wave. And the propagation of the shock wave of the explosion requires sufficient medium. There is air in the atmosphere, so this huge energy can be converted into extremely strong destructive force and released. In outer space, the nuclear bomb explosion only has the pitiful medium inside itself to act as the shockwave medium, and the destructive power is much smaller. As for high energy rays and high temperatures, they are not uncommon in space. The destructive power of these two is even stronger than in the atmosphere, but their coverage is much smaller. In addition, space is empty and the distance scale is larger. When looking at a nuclear explosion from a space perspective, its lethality is even smaller. There was once a science fiction movie describing that in order to destroy an asteroid that was about to hit the Earth in advance, humans launched a nuclear bomb but did not break it. In the end, it would be better to send people to drill holes in the asteroid to bury bombs. The reason is that the vacuum state lacks enough medium to transmit the detonation wave. However, Luger's nuclear explosion was not triggered in a vacuum. After the explosion on the burning hell side, the blast wave will spread outwards and throw the medium on the hell side into the hell gate. And these media still carry huge kinetic energy. When they are shot into space through the hell gate, there is no resistance from other air and material particles, and no gravity constraints, so they will spray out more wantonly. It looks like someone fired a particle cannon at the hell gate. However, these particles are not high-energy elementary particles, but some dust and gas molecules. Well, considering the high temperature and high pressure, this is more like a plasma beam. Those seraphim guarding the hell gate were soon attacked by this plasma beam. Those whose bodies were instantly melted were the luckiest. Those seraphim whose half of their bodies were burned or whose skin was only melted were miserable. Seraphim really became a scorched angel. Or Birdman. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Oriel was shocked when he saw this, and immediately called the Seraphim Legion to retreat. The Angel of Hope's combat ability is the lowest among the 5 archangels, but she is good at assisting, especially healing. So those seraphim who were half melted by the scorching heat, as long as they can insist on retreating, sooner or later, they will always be saved by her. The front was melted by the plasma jet, and the retreat was saved by the Angel of Hope. In this contrast, the seraphim of the Courage faction, who had been secretly thinking of taking this opportunity to force the Emperor to abdicate, slowly gave up the idea. These guys really have a kind of obsession to prove their courage and do not care about anything, even their own lives. But that must be able to show their courage. Being burned to ashes by this inexplicable high-temperature plasma cannot show their courage at all. It only makes their death look stupid and worthless. Although this change of the Seraphim core of the Courage sequence is subtle, it still cannot escape the eyes of the already meticulous Oriole. This makes the Angel of Hope, who has been under increasing pressure to abdicate recently, more or less relieved. And all this is because of that man. Thinking of that man, she couldn't help but look at the source of the plasma beam, the gate of hell that was becoming dim and fragile. Lugger, right. I hope we can have a good chat next time we meet. After saying this silently, she was slightly stunned, and then laughed dumbly. The hope of the Angel of Hope will always come true. At the same time, the gate of hell finally couldn't hold on any longer under the impact of the jet, and it shattered into countless particles in the air like broken glass, and then disappeared. On the other side of the gate, hell was burning. Lugger, who flew away from the center of the explosion, also flew back again after the blast wave was completely released. Just landed not far behind the 3 Demon Kings. As soon as he landed, the 3 Demon Kings, who seemed to be staring at the mushroom cloud in a daze, turned around almost at the same time and looked at Lugger. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi Ji. Chapter 510. Ruger was also a little stunned by their uniform turn. But soon he laughed again, pointing to the location of the gate of hell that had disappeared in the middle of the explosion, and said, "Well, don't worry, I got rid of it. With a big firework." Big firework? The 3 Demon Kings looked at each other, thinking that if your thing is a firework, what are we, brothers? Barbie dolls? Mephisto reacted the fastest. Seeing that the scene was a little awkward, the 3 of them seemed to stand straight in front of Ruger, but they were actually a little nervous. He immediately cooperated with Ruger and smiled. While smiling as cordially as possible, he said to Ruger, "Hey, brother-in-law, you said you are back home, why are you so polite? I prepared a fireworks party to liven up the atmosphere. You are so polite, so polite. I am sorry to have cost you so much money. Well, I don't have anything prepared here, so this perfect magic gem is your welcome gift to you when you come home. It is definitely not as good as your fireworks party, so don't think that I am too shabby, haha." Seeing him behave like this, Ruger was not surprised at all, and took the legendary yellow lightning gem with a smile on his face, and was polite to Mephisto. "Brother-in-law, how can your legendary gem catch up with my 10 big fireworks? You are the one who paid for it, you paid for it?" Mephisto's words, although they seemed polite on the surface, actually had ulterior motives. The core purpose is to find out from the side whether Lugger's attack is a big move that he must hold back for a long time, or an ordinary small move that can be used at will. The difference between the two is huge. The nuclear explosion is not a big threat to the devil himself, that is based on the premise that it is Lugger's big move. If this guy can throw nuclear bombs at will, they will still not be able to bear it. Not to mention that they all have their own territories and forces in the burning hell. Those, like Lugger's rogue city, are afraid of large-scale attacks such as nuclear bombs. In order to get Lugger's bottom as much as possible, Mephisto did not hesitate to take out a legendary magic gem. Legendary gems are level 6 gems that are 1 level higher than level 5 perfect gems. Based on the point price of recycling these gems in the Lugger system store, An ordinary level 3 gem is worth 160 points. Level 4 is worth 640. Level 5 is 2560. Level 6 legendary, that is 10,240 points. This is a lot of wealth even for the demon. Mephisto wanted to use this huge sum of money to pry open Ruger's mouth. After all, when a normal person suddenly faces such a huge sum of money, his mood will inevitably be excited, and he will easily say something nonsense, and then accidentally blurt out the truth. Unfortunately, the information that Ruger blurted out really made Mephisto feel that it would be better not to know. What did Ruger say? He said that Mephisto's legendary gem could be worth 10 of his big fireworks. The implication is that he only needs to pay the price of a legendary gem to make 10 of those nuclear bombs. According to the standards of the demon, although a legendary gem is valuable, it is not just one. No matter what, the demon's entire property is at least worth thousands or even more legendary gems. So if Ruger wants to fight to the death, he can at least release 10,000 nuclear explosions. This is a normal attack. The smile on Mephisto's face became more flattering. He even turned around and winked at Asmodan and Belial, who looked puzzled, and signaled them to cooperate with him to tell Ruger about the affection between his elder brother-in-law and his brother-in-law, and between his younger brother-in-law and his brother-in-law. Although the two of them were full of lawsuits and had no idea what was going on, at least they knew that Mephisto would not harm them in such matters, so they cooperated in the play. For a while, the scene of the four people was really a scene of brothers and sisters, and they were happy. If you don't know, you would really think that they were four brothers chatting there. So, is Ruger telling the truth? Can a legendary gem equivalent to more than 10,000 points really be equivalent to 10 uranium bombs? Well, that is absolutely impossible. But for Ruger, he didn't lie. Because more than 10,000 points are the points he spent on buying natural uranium ore from the system store. After layers of purification, these uranium ores were finally processed by him into small balls with a very special shape and texture, which can just make up half a ton, or about 500 kilograms. With these enriched uranium, he can indeed make 10 nuclear explosions of the lowest level. As for whether he can continuously launch 10,000 atomic bombs, how to say it? With the accumulation of time and the increase of inventory, maybe he can do it in the future. After all, the half-life of uranium-235 is 700 million years, so there is no need to worry about spoiling it once it is made. Strictly speaking, his nuclear explosion is not achieved with real nuclear bombs. There are no fragile electronic components, and there is no such thing as a shelf life of only 30 to 50 years. As long as he is given time to purify it with a centrifuge, one day, he will really be able to launch 10,000 uranium bomb-style nuclear explosion attacks that have just reached critical mass. But now, it is obviously not possible. So, Mephisto's comment on Ruger was absolutely correct. He should replace Belial and become the new generation of cunning demon. This guy clearly didn't tell a single lie, he told the truth, but he was able to fool others. This is what cunning should look like. Ruger was being polite to the three demons with ulterior motives. It took a little while, and finally Tia, who had been waiting for his news, got impatient. He turned into Tia Polo and got out of Rogue City. Tia was about to ask for punishment, but she saw Ruger talking and laughing with the three demons, as if they were real family. She was stunned immediately. But soon, she noticed the typical appearance of the surrounding environment after a nuclear explosion, and after a little thought, she understood. So she also jumped out of the space door with a smile, walked to Ruger, patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Why, you boys are idle and playing around again." "What do you mean, you boys?" The three demon kings recalled the original appearance of Diablo, and then looked at the charming and slender red dragon appearance of Tyabura, and they all shuddered. When Ruger saw her coming out, he immediately smiled and repeated the fireworks set of words to avoid the problem that she might say something that would reveal the secret in advance. Then, the couple really acted like a young couple returning to their parents' home after their wedding, and they became polite to their parents' family.